In this video, you learn how to make any 3-chord song sound great on guitar. Simply strumming the same old boring open and bar chords over and over again gets tiresome really quick. Hi, this is Simon Candy from Acoustic Guitar Lessons Online.net, and in this video I sit down with guitar playing breakthrough specialist Tom Hess and beginner guitar specialist Maurice to talk about and demonstrate how to make any simple 3-chord song sound great on guitar. Now, there's nothing wrong with strumming open chords. We do it all the time and it sounds fine. So in and of itself, no problem at all. I will strum open chords myself. However, if this is all you do, then it's a problem. And what you'll find is if your ear doesn't get immune to the sound of just strumming open chords all the time, the listener's ear certainly will. So we need different ways to approach playing chords to provide like light and shade to the music that you play so we can get a good dynamic range. So that is exactly what we're going to do in this video. Keep watching and I'll show you ways that you can approach simple songs to make them sound really great on your guitar. Keep watching until the end of the video for a very special free 5-day mini course I've created for you all about rhythm guitar playing on the acoustic, and that will give you further ideas to bring to the songs that you play to create interest, dynamics, light and shade. Okay, so let's get into it. There is a question here from, I think is it Alan or Alon Kaufman? Hopefully I'm close to the correct pronunciation there. How would you apply techniques to a simple 3-chord campfire song on solo acoustic guitar? So, well, my thoughts there would be, there's a lot of techniques, so it depends on what techniques you would be talking about. But if we're talking about a 3-chord campfire song, you could think it's often good to take one chord progression, say one 3-chord song, and just challenge yourself to play it as many different ways as you possibly can on the guitar. So some different ways that you could play it, if we've got a simple 3-chord song, would be open chords, of course. You could play it with bar chords. You could play it with triad shapes. You could, a thing I like to do a lot is drone open strings around chords higher up the fretboard so you get a nice big sound. Sometimes if you're talking solo acoustic guitar, so I'm going to assume that's just you playing on your own. So, you know, triad shapes, for example, can sound very thin when it's just you playing, but if you drone open strings in with them, so if you've got a triad shape like an A to an E, you know, that can sound a little thin when there's nothing else behind you, but you can bring in the droning of open strings there. So it's a much bigger sound, and so it's a different way to play chords than always just playing down in the open position. There's nothing wrong with this. And in fact, what I would probably do if I was arranging something 3 chords would be and it's just on a single guitar, I'm going to think like a band. I'm going to, you know, want to create the same sorts of dynamics that you get in a band. It's going to be different, but I'm going to think dynamically. So there might be times where I just play smaller chord shapes for a small portion of time, and then there's more impact when I go into, you know, hitting the open chords. Of course, you can play bar chords and extensions on your chords. You can chordal pick and have little, you know, embellishments that you can add to the chord progression. You can finger pick it. There's a ton of things that you can do, but it's a good idea to take one chord progression as opposed to always changing that up, because it's challenging you to think deeper rather than broader. So if you keep looking at new stuff, you'll get distracted with that and you'll just sort of be surface level. It's a little bit like trying to make, you know, one note sound great. Instead of having all the notes there to, you know, play with, you got one note. So you really got to think, and well, how can I make this great? How can I phrase this? And so if you only got one chord progression, you're restricting yourself. It's a restriction, which is good because it gets you out of playing what you would normally do. I'm not sure if you've got any thoughts on that, Tom Hess.
I do. I've got a few thoughts on this. And this is a really good question, actually, Alan or Alan, however you pronounce your name. So going off of what Simon just talked about, he he said he made a couple of comments. The one he said, thinking more deeply instead of more broadly. In other words, instead of thinking about how many different things you can, how many different, totally different things you could do, how deep can you go with the ideas that you have? How can you refine it further, add another layer? So those are some concepts to think. It's a different, totally different way of thinking, this way versus this way. Then the second thing is that if the song is going to have singing in it, if there's either you're going to sing or someone's going to sing over it, this would drastically change, for me, it would change how I would play the tune. So with all songs that have voice, typically there are instrumental sections, and then there are the singing sections. Well, when the singer is singing, whether that's you or someone else, the primary, typically, not always, but typically the primary focus is and ought to be on the singer or the singing, whether that's you or somebody else. Okay, so I would tend not to be putting in the most musically complex version of the three chords while the singer is singing. I probably would reserve that for when the singer is not singing, and now it's just me, or in this case you, playing, and then I would seek to do more when it's just truly instrumental and there's no singing going on. It's kind of like in a rock band setting. It would be a little bit strange in most cases if you start soloing all over the singer's verse and choruses, all those. Maybe at the very end there'd be an outro solo after the chorus has been heard, 8 times. You might solo over that with the singer, but generally, verse 1 doesn't include a guitar solo on top. Well, why not? Well, because the focus in this moment is on the singer and the lyrics. So I would tend to make the more simpler versions when the singer is singing, and then reserve the deeper, more complicated stuff, more intricate stuff, sophisticated stuff when the singer is not singing. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that expanding on that concept of having 2 different ways to play it. If you've got 3 chords and the song goes on for 4 minutes, that's a long time to listen to 3 chords, really a long time. So if you play regardless of how you play the 3 chords, strum them in a certain way, do Travis picking with acoustic guitar, anything else, if you do it the same way, no matter how cool that way is, it's going to get stale for the listener. You might think it's cool because you're the one doing it, so you might be having fun, but the effect on the listener starts to go away over time. They build up something called musical immunity. They become immune to what's going on. So, for example, to use an example in a totally different style, as I mentioned, I teach a lot of these metal guys, and a lot of times they'll have songs on their 7-string guitars, and they got the low B, and they want to tune that down to A, and right. So what happens on the first? They record a whole album, and here's what happens. Song 1, what's the first chord? Boom, low A, on the 7-string guitar, right? How does the song end? Boom, on the same note. Guess how the second song starts? On the same note. It's on the low 7th string. Guess how that song ends? Yep, you guessed it. Same thing. Guess how the third song starts? Guess how the whole album is? So it's a cool sound. It's a great sound. There's massive amounts of power there, and it sounds really cool. And it feels good when you're playing it. But the problem is, even for fans of that style, the impact, the power is lost because the listener builds up immunity. It's not special anymore. Okay. It's like, well, you get the idea. So that principle, it's very common among, really hardcore metal songwriters to do this. Not really the professional ones, but the more the amateur ones. They make this mistake all the time because they lose the power. They lose the very thing that they're trying to communicate, which is power. Okay. So getting back to your example, if you've got a really cool, let's say Travis picking thing, and you do that the whole time, and it's the same pattern, and you're playing the chords in the same position, in the same inversion, no matter how great it is, the effect is lost. So thinking I would be less concerned about how should I play over these three chords. I'd be more concerned about how am I going to sustain this for 4 minutes. So here's a chunk of time where the chord progression goes by. I'm going to play it a certain way. Now, 30 seconds later, I'm still playing this. Maybe I should have another way to do this. And then maybe I should have yet another way to do this. And then yet another way to do this. So it's not, it doesn't get stale. You don't have to change it up on every chord or every repetition. But if it's the same thing, no matter how great it is, it just loses its effect. So those are the two main things I'd be thinking about. How to repeat this for a long period of time and what to do when the singer is singing or there's a soloist. I know you mentioned you're playing by yourself, but the principle applies if you're playing with others. If there's a second guitar player or, I don't know, a horn player or whatever, and he's doing a solo, you might want to pull it back a little bit. So those are my thoughts on that. Great question, though.
Yeah, and just finally on that, I think if you are playing solo, listen to the song that you're playing and listen to the other instruments in the song, because you're going to grab ideas from those. For example, little bass lines that you can grab in between your chord changes. Listening to the drums will influence the way you might strum. So if you want to pick up a bit of a groove and get a bit of a percussive hit on the second and fourth beat, for example. But if you really listen to the other instruments, you can really replicate the feeling, and the idea behind that in a solo context. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love doing that stuff. Just seeing, how can I take this song and make it work on an acoustic guitar? And sometimes it's solo, sometimes it might be with somebody else. But it's just, learning bass lines. And in doing that, you get such a great understanding of music overall. You're not just sort of, guitar and everything else is just, out of your vision. A couple of other questions I think we will address here. So they're both kind of along the same way, in the same vein. So we've got Frank again, how to change up chord voicings to keep it interesting. And there's another question here that's similar, so we could maybe address both. What's the best way to learn chords further up the guitar neck as opposed to just playing them all in the open position? So I would start students on triads because it lays the foundation to actually understand chords. If you just play open chords and bar chords, I mean, these are great, of course, and you're going to do that a lot as a guitar player. And they give you access to songs. And I think that's important. I mean, you want to be in and playing, right? So in a perfect world, in my own sort of way, I'd like, let's do triads because we can then really understand chords. And then, it's kind of like a bit of a snapshot of chords here. You can connect the bar chord to the open chords, like we were talking before, but there's a lot of blind spots on the fretboard. If a lot of real estate unexplored, if you like, if you're just going to do bar chords and open chords. Because, of course, if we were playing a C, we could play a C here, we could play a bar chord there, and we could play a C here. But what about everything in between and so forth? So
Correct.
Triads, definitely. And triads, if people are wondering what triads are, it's just a 3-note chord. I mean, all major chords and minor chords have 3 notes. But when we're talking triads, we're just saying 1 note of each. I mean, if I play a C chord here, I've got, 2 C's, 2 E's, and a G there. So, we've got some double ups with the notes. If I'm playing a C triad, I'm only going to play 1 of each of those notes. So, and Correct. It could be in any order here. So, and triads work in string sets. So we have like 3-2-1, 4-3-2, as you were saying, I think 5-4-3 or 6-5-4. So, you can learn your triad shape in all these positions and have a whole lot more available to you on the fretboard. You can play C in 3 positions per string set. So there's 12 more C's that you could play just off of a couple of simple shapes.
That's just in the first 12 frets.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at a lot of the triad shapes, if you've already got bar chords and open chords down, you can relate a lot of these shapes to those bar chords and open chords. So the C triad here is the little fragment of the larger bar chord shape, and then there's that triad in there, and there's that triad in there. So you've got these little triad shapes all within the larger C. So that's what you want to do with chords in general, is be able to connect them all together. They've got to be connected, otherwise you're not going to be able to find them when you want to use them in your playing. Oh, one more thing, actually. Sorry, there's one thing I was going to say about the chords. And I did just do a video on my YouTube channel, I think it was last week. And that is taking chords like open chords and just moving them up the fretboard without barring. Some places it won't sound great. Other places it'll sound great. So you can just take open chords and move them up the fretboard. You can sort of use your ear and see where they sound okay. You can grab this E chord. You know, there's a lot of places where you can move the chord and keep the drone of the open string, yet the notes, the fretted notes of the chord change, and then you get all kind of cool extensions and so forth to the chord. You don't have to know what they are. You're just playing around with the concept. So that's a good way. Often you see a D chord, C to D, might be played C, and the C moved up, and you get this open G in there, which suspends the chord. So there's things like that, and look out for those sorts of things. John Mayer, he's a good player to look at in terms of harmony and these types of things. If you like this video, then you'll love this acoustic rhythm guitar techniques mini course. In this course, you learn 5 ways to sound much better as a rhythm guitarist, including strumming techniques, chordal picking, rhythm riffs and fills, as well as cool sounding chords and embellishments. Over the course of 5 days, you will not only be trained in depth on each of these areas of your guitar playing, but also how to put it all together to create great sounding music. So click the link in the description below this video to gain access to the Acoustic Rhythm Guitar Techniques mini course. Let me know in the comments which acoustic guitar topics you'd like to see covered in future videos. Also, let me know what are some of your favorite ways to address simple songs to make them more interesting on guitar. Are there any that you do that we didn't cover in today's video? If you like this video, then hit that like button, and don't forget, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the channel, and of course hit the all important notification bell button so YouTube can tell you when I've released a new video. This is Simon Candy from acousticguitarlessonsonline.net. As always, thank you for watching this video, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one.